Her chest tightened before she knew why. A familiar burn crawled up her throat, though no one had spoken a cruel word, no one had pointed a finger. The shame was already there, like a ghost stitched into her skin. She laughed lightly in conversation, but her body betrayed her, the shallow breath, the tense jaw, the restless tapping of her fingers. This is the strange betrayal of memory. The body keeps score long after the mind insists it has forgotten. You may tell yourself the past is gone, that you have moved on, that the secrets you carry are safely buried beneath years of silence. But the truth is, silence is never empty. It hums, it presses, it waits. And when you least expect it, the body calls it back, uninvited, undeniable. The shoulders that ache without reason, the stomach that knots at the sound of certain voices, the sudden dizziness when someone looks at you too closely, these are not random quirks. They are the language of what was once unspeakable. Shame is the most invisible wound, yet it shapes everything. It dictates the tone of your voice, the curve of your spine, the way you choose or refuse love. Carl Jung wrote that what we resist not only persists but grows stronger in the shadows. And shame, more than any wound, loves to hide in the dark. It convinces you that you are wrong at your core, that to be seen is to be judged, that to be vulnerable is to be destroyed. And so you learn to deny it with your mind, while your body carries it like a second skin. Imagine a child scolded not just for mistakes, but for existing too loudly. She learns to shrink herself before she even knows what shrinking means. She learns that her voice brings punishment, that her need for comfort is too heavy, that her joy is too bright. This child does not simply grow up and leave those lessons behind. She grows into a woman whose laughter sounds rehearsed, whose love feels conditional, whose body stiffens at touch even when she longs for tenderness. The mind may not recall every moment, but the body remembers the verdict. You are too much. You are not enough. It is heavy, isn't it? To realize how often you have mistaken survival for freedom. To realize that the coping patterns you wear like armor are in fact chains. Perfectionism, overgiving, silence, self-erasure, these are not personality traits. They are scars. And if you listen closely, the scars still speak. They whisper every time you silence your own truth. They ache every time you swallow your boundaries to keep the peace. They flare when love feels close enough to heal you, but also close enough to wound you again. This is why the body must be honored as the archive of your life. It remembers what your conscious mind rejects. It remembers the shame you promised yourself you would never feel again. It remembers the moment you decided that invisibility was safer than authenticity. And until you turn toward it, it will continue to carry the weight silently, bending your posture, dulling your spirit, keeping you small. But there is another truth hiding beneath the pain. The body that remembers your shame also remembers your longing. The same chest that tightens in fear can also expand in liberation. The same trembling hands that once froze in self-protection can also open in self-acceptance. The body does not only keep wounds, it also carries the map back to freedom. And this map is drawn not by denying the wound, but by meeting it. You feel that, don't you? The quiet tug in your stomach, as if something in you knows this is not only theory, that your shame has lived too long in silence, that the stories etched into your bones want to be spoken, or cried, or released in movement, or whispered in prayer. Healing does not begin in the mind. Healing begins in the body, because the body is where the betrayal was first written. And yet to turn toward this wound is terrifying. To lift the veil on shame feels like walking into a room with no lights, unsure what monsters will appear. But the monsters are not as they seem. They are the fragments of you that were abandoned, waiting to be held. They are your inner child, still crouched in the corner, waiting for someone, finally, you to tell her that she is not too much, that she is not too little, that she is not wrong for being alive. This is where the work begins. Not by silencing the body, but by listening to it. not by denying the shame, but by asking what it has tried to protect you from. Not by running faster, but by sitting still and hearing what the silence has been trying to say all along. And as you listen, a question stirs. If the body remembers what the mind denies, then what would happen if you finally gave it permission to speak? At first, the voice of the body feels like a whisper beneath the noise of your thoughts. A tightening here, a tremor there, a hollow ache behind the sternum that has no medical name. You may dismiss it as stress or fatigue, but these are not accidents. They are mesa. Jess, coded in sensation, waiting for you to finally pay attention. The body speaks in the language of metaphor. A throat that closes when you try to say no. A stomach that burns after you swallow your anger. A back that stiffens each time you pretend to carry what was never yours. You may not remember the moment your shame was born. Memory is slippery, especially when the mind protects itself by shutting doors it cannot yet face. But the body remembers without judgment, without timeline. For it, the wound is always now. The trembling hands, the shallow breath, the sudden fogginess, they do not ask if the danger is past. They only echo the terror that once was. To the body, yesterday can still live inside today. This is why healing cannot be approached only with intellect. To tell yourself you are worthy is not enough when your chest still collapses every time someone raises their voice. To repeat affirmations is not enough when your spine still curls inward, rehearsing invisibility. You cannot think your way into wholeness. You must feel your way slowly, tenderly, as though you were guiding a child out of hiding. Carl Jung taught that what we avoid most holds the key to our growth. Shame, though it feels like poison, is also a portal. Beneath its suffocating weight is the exiled part of you, the one who believed she was unworthy of love. To face shame is to step into shadow, but also to uncover the treasure it guards. Jung called this integration, the retrieval of what was abandoned so that the self might become whole. Think of the body as an oracle. Each sensation, each pain, each tension is a symbol, not just a symptom. The frozen shoulders are the shield you learned to raise as a child. The restless legs are the escape routes you rehearsed when home felt unsafe. The pounding heart is not weakness. It is the drumbeat of a warrior who survived. To honor these signs is to reclaim the story of your survival. To ignore them is to remain trapped in a cycle where the wound chooses for you. You feel this in your daily life more than you realize. The moment you say yes when every nerve screams no. The hollow fatigue after spending hours trying to be who others expect you to be. The shame that rises when you receive kindness because somewhere inside you believe you do not deserve it. These are not coincidences. They are the body remembering, replaying, repeating, and each repetition is an invitation. Heavy, isn't it? To admit that much of your life may have been guided by wounds you did not choose, but it is also liberating, because if shame has written its story into your body, then healing can rewrite it there too. Breath by breath, gesture by gesture, step by step, the body can be taught safety. The shoulders that once held fear can learn to soften. The throat that once closed in silence can open in truth. The stomach that once knotted in anxiety can rest in peace. The work is not glamorous. It is not a sudden burst of light, but a slow warming after years of winter. It is choosing to pause when you want to run. It is placing a hand on your heart when you want to disappear. It is noticing that the trembling you feel is not weakness, but energy, long frozen, now thawing. This is the somatic path of healing. It is not about fixing what is broken. It is about remembering what has always been whole beneath the shame. And as you touch these places, something subtle begins to shift. The silence inside you starts to feel less like a void and more like a listening presence. The body, once an enemy, becomes an ally. You realize that it has never betrayed you. It has only carried what you could not yet face. It has remembered so that one day, when you were ready, you could return and gather the pieces of yourself you left behind. But here lies the question that waits at the edge of this truth. If the body is willing to release the shame it has carried, are you willing to let go of the identity you built around it? Letting go is more frightening than holding on. Shame may suffocate, but it also gives structure. It tells you who you are, even if that identity is built on distortion. To live without it feels like walking into an open field after years of hiding in a cage. The cage was small, but it was familiar. The field is wide, but it demands courage. This is why so many remain loyal to their shame. Not because they enjoy suffering, but because shame offers a strange kind of safety. If you believe you are unworthy, then you never risk the terror of being rejected while standing fully in your worth. If you believe you are broken, then you never face the responsibility of claiming your power. Shame keeps you small, but it also keeps you safe from the unbearable possibility of freedom. But what if safety is not the same as peace? What if the tight chest and restless heart are proof that your body is begging you to outgrow the cage? Jung wrote that the shadow, when faced, becomes a source of energy. The same shame that once crushed you can, when integrated, become the fire that fuels your authenticity. It is not that the body forgets, but that the memory is no longer poison. It becomes wisdom. Picture the child again, the one who learned to shrink. She grew into a woman who hides her brilliance, who doubts her voice, who performs love instead of receiving it. But imagine now, she meets the gaze of her older self, not the one still carrying shame, but the one who has stepped into freedom. The older self kneels down, looks her in the eyes, and says, "You were never too much. You were never too little. You were always enough." In that moment, the child exhales. The body softens. The story begins to change. You might wonder, how does such a shift happen in real life? It happens in the small, embodied choices you make every day. Choosing to breathe deeply instead of bracing your shoulders. Choosing to speak the truth even when your throat trembles. Choosing to rest instead of performing endless strength. These are not dramatic gestures, but they are revolutionary. Each one tells the body, the danger has passed, you are safe now. And slowly, the body believes it. Of course, the mind resists. It insists on certainty, on control, on explanations. But the body heals in mystery. It heals in tears that rise without warning, in laughter that bursts after years of silence, in shivers that feel like electricity leaving the bones. To trust this process is to trust that healing is not linear, not logical, but cyclical. Like the moon, like the seasons, like a woman's own body. And as the cycles turn, you begin to notice something subtle yet undeniable. The triggers that once silenced you now awaken curiosity. The shame that once swallowed you now invites compassion. The body that once betrayed you now guides you toward freedom. This is the alchemy of healing. The wound that once defined you becomes the well from which you draw your strength. Still, the path asks for courage. To live without shame is to step into visibility, to risk love, to embrace vulnerability. It means your body no longer hides the past, but carries it openly as testimony. The scar remains, but it shines like gold in the cracks, a reminder that wholeness was never about perfection, but about integration. You feel it now, don't you? The possibility trembling at the edges of your awareness. The sense that the shame you thought was permanent might in fact be dissolving. That beneath it, a truer self has been waiting, patient, resilient, radiant. But here the silence asks its most piercing question. If the body has carried your past so faithfully, will you now allow it to carry your freedom? Freedom is heavier than it seems. It does not float in like a feather. It anchors itself in the bones. To embody freedom is to walk differently, to breathe differently, to inhabit your body as though it were your rightful home. But this homecoming requires something most of us avoid. It requires grieving. For every part of you that wants to step forward, there is another part that mourns. She mourns the years spent in silence, the opportunities lost, the love you could not receive, the words you never said. She mourns the self you had to become just to survive. And grieving her is not weakness, it is reverence. Jung reminded us that no transformation can occur without sorrow. To heal shame is not to bypass the grief, but to let it wash through you, so that the soil of your soul becomes fertile again. Imagine standing in a dim room, walls covered in mirrors. Each reflection shows a different version of you, the child hiding her tears, the teenager pretending to be unbothered, the adult performing perfection while trembling inside. At first, it feels unbearable to face them all. But as you stand longer, you notice something. Each reflection carries not just pain, but resilience. Each one survived what you thought would destroy you. And as you watch, the mirrors shift, not to erase the scars, but to reveal the beauty woven through them. The shame that once bent your spine now gleams as evidence of your endurance. This is what it means to confront the shadow, to see not only the darkness but the light hidden inside it. Shame tells you that you are defined by your worst moment. Healing reveals that you are defined by your capacity to rise from it. The wound does not vanish, but it no longer rules. Instead, it becomes the teacher. You feel this lesson in the body before you know it in the mind. The breath that once caught in your throat begins to flow easier. The shoulders that once curled forward begin to open. The voice that once trembled begins to steady. Healing is not a single moment of revelation. It is 1,000 tiny recalibrations, each one reclaiming what shame tried to steal. And still, there are days when the old stories return. Days when the body tenses, when the old fear presses at the edges of your chest. This is not failure. This is the rhythm of healing. Wounds surf. Ace in spirals, not in straight lines. Each time they return, you are invited to meet them with greater tenderness, greater strength, greater truth. So you learn to welcome the body's reminders, not as betrayals but as signals. A racing heart becomes an invitation to breathe deeper. A tightening jaw becomes a reminder to unclench and speak honestly. A heavy chest becomes a call to lay down what was never yours to carry. This is the practice, listening without judgment, responding with compassion, trusting that each sensation carries wisdom. There comes a moment, quiet, almost unnoticeable, when the shame no longer feels like a master. It may still whisper, but it no longer dictates. You stand taller. You meet the gaze of others without flinching. You laugh without rehearsing. The body, once burdened by memory, now becomes a vessel of presence. And yet, at the edge of this new freedom, another truth emerges. The same body that remembers your wounds is also capable of remembering your worth. But memory requires repetition. If shame was carved into you through years of silence and self-denial, then worth must be etched through years of truth and self-acceptance. So the question lingers, pressing at the threshold of your awareness. Will you practice this new memory long enough for the body to believe it? Worth is not an idea you borrow. It is a memory you restore. The body must relearn it through experience, not through argument. Every time you say no and survive the discomfort, worth takes root. Every time you accept kindness without shrinking, worth expands. Every time you rest without guilt, worth settles deeper into your bones. This is how freedom becomes embodied, not in one grand revelation, but in countless small choices that rewrite the nervous system. At first, these choices feel foreign. The body resists, pulling you back toward the familiar rhythm of shame. A compliment arrives and instinctively you deflect it. A boundary rises and your chest tightens, begging you to soften it. A moment of joy surfaces and a voice whispers that it won't last. But if you stay, if you breathe, if you let the sensation pass without collapsing into the old story, something begins to shift. The body learns. It rewires. It remembers. Jung often spoke of individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are by integrating all that was once denied. Shame fractures you, scattering pieces of yourself across time. Healing gathers them back. It is less about creating a new self and more about remembering the self you always were. The body becomes the altar where this remembering takes place. Picture it, a woman who once walked with her shoulders hunched, eyes lowered, steps cautious. Over time, her posture begins to change. Not because someone told her to stand tall, but because her body no longer carries the weight of silence. Her chest opens. Her gaze steadies. Her steps find rhythm. People notice her presence before she even speaks, not because she performs, but because she inhabits herself fully. This is what it means to be remembered by your own body. There is beauty in the ordinariness of it. Healing does not always look like radiant transformations captured in light. Sometimes it looks like cooking dinner without anxiety clenching your stomach. Sometimes it looks like lying down at night without the ache of self-criticism gnawing at your mind. Sometimes it looks like laughing so freely that you forget, for a moment, you were ever ashamed of your joy. These are the quiet revolutions that change everything. But there is also a cost. To embody worth is to lose the old identity that was built around shame. You can no longer play small to make others comfortable. You can no longer silence your truth for the sake of peace. You can no longer betray yourself to earn love. Freedom will ask you to disappoint people who benefited from your silence. It will ask you to risk being misunderstood. It will ask you to walk into rooms where your full presence feels disruptive. Heavy, isn't it? But this heaviness is not the same as the weight of shame. This is the gravity of authenticity, pulling you into alignment with your truest self. And as you feel it, your body recognizes it, not as danger but as belonging. Still, the question persists, steady and unyielding. If your body is no longer a cage for shame, will you allow it to become a temple of truth? A temple is not built in a day. It rises stone by stone, each one placed with patience, each one requiring intention. In the same way, your body becomes a temple of truth not through sudden transformation but through daily devotion. Every breath you take with awareness, every boundary you honor, every moment you choose to stand in your own presence is another stone laid in the foundation. Over time, the structure takes form, and you begin to realize you are no longer simply surviving inside a body. You are inhabiting a sacred space. And this temple does not erase your scars. It displays them. Like stained glass catching sunlight, your wounds refract into colors you could not see when you were buried in shame. The scar on your heart is not an imperfection. It is a window. Through it shines resilience, courage, tenderness. You no longer need to hide where you have been broken because those places have become the very proof of your wholeness. But to live this way requires trust. Trust that the body, once a vessel of pain, can also be a vessel of joy. Trust that trembling is not a warning but a sign of energy awakening. Trust that the tears rising in your chest are not weakness but release. This trust is not blind. It is born of practice, of showing up to your own sensations without judgment until they reveal their deeper meaning. Jung believed that each descent into shadow holds a gift. For the woman who carries shame, the gift is the reclamation of her voice. The very throat that once tightened in silence becomes the channel of her truth. The very spine that once curled inward begins to rise. The very body that once betrayed her with panic becomes her compass, guiding her toward what is authentic and away from what is false. In this way, the body is not only memory, it is prophecy. Imagine again that open field you once feared to step into. Now, instead of shrinking, you walk barefoot across it. The ground is solid beneath you, the air expands your lungs, the horizon calls you forward. The cage of shame is nowhere in sight. And though you still carry your past, it no longer dictates your steps. The body that once collapsed now supports you. It has become the instrument of your freedom. Do you feel it? That quiet shift deep inside, as though something long dormant is stirring awake. That is not fantasy, it is remembrance. Your body remembers not only the shame, but also the truth buried beneath it. The truth that you were never broken, only silenced. The truth that you were never unworthy, only convinced. The truth that you were always whole, waiting for the day you would return to yourself. And so the story turns. The body that once held your shame now carries your liberation. The mind that once denied now bows to the wisdom of the flesh. This is not the end of struggle, but the beginning of embodiment. You are no longer at war with yourself. You are home. But there is one last question, whispered like a blessing, lingering like a vow. Now that you stand in your temple of truth, who will you dare to become?